Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General Patraeus, good to see you again. I'm going to refer to your written remarks. Quote, our most important ally in this war, referring to the conflict with Al-Qaeda, the Islamic State, Boko Haram, and the like, is the overwhelming majority of Muslims who reject Al-Qaeda, Daesh, and their fanatical, barbaric worldview, end quote. How confident are you today that the, quote, overwhelming majority of Muslims, end quote, to which you refer, will defeat the Islamic State without a major world power's intervention or support?
Oh, no, they need our enabling, but they are critical to this fight. Without them, if the populations ever turn either very supportive of these individuals or very rejecting of us, then obviously the conditions change completely, and we're in a very, very big world of hurt, as they say.
Same question, but with respect to Boko Haram. How confident are you that the, quote, overwhelming majority of Muslims, end quote, will defeat Boko Haram without a major world power's intervention or support?
Oh, again, absolutely they need enablers. The challenge in Nigeria, of course, was that we had a very difficult time finding good partners to combat that when I was in my final position in government.
And would your answer be the same with other entities like Al-Qaeda and the Taliban, that without major world power support, the overwhelming majority of Muslims would not be able to defeat them?
I think in virtually every case, our assistance is invaluable. I can certainly envision cases where a country can do this on its own. I think that Saudi Arabia defeated, if you will, Al-Qaeda, say, a decade or so ago. Certainly there was a partnership there, there was intelligence sharing, there was assistance in a variety of ways, but they were the ones who defeated Al-Qaeda in their country. There are other examples of that, where countries have also defeated Al-Qaeda or held it back. But again, in the cases where this becomes, I think, hugely important, i.e. it's spilling over the boundaries, it's spreading extremism, instability, and refugees into neighboring countries and even farther, then clearly there's a role for the United States and a coalition of allies, noting that we want as many as we can there, and we want Muslim partners in this as well.
Given your comments that, as I interpret them, seem to say that the support of a major power is either much needed, if not necessary, to defeat these Islamic terrorist groups, is it your judgment that Islamic extremism is destined to dominate Islamic nations unless the world's powers intervene with manpower, weaponry, and other material support?
No, I think, again, there are certainly many Muslim countries around the world that can either deal with this themselves or with a modicum of the sort of the traditional sharing and so forth, and perhaps some training and assistance. It is more the case in the ungoverned spaces where I think we have to learn 5 very, very important reasons or lessons, if I could, very quickly. First is ungoverned spaces will be exploited by extremists. It will be.
General, okay. Thank you. You've answered my question.
Okay.
And any additional comments you want to give, please submit them in writing, but I want to move to a second line. You also state in your written remarks, quote, we must also recognize that long-term success in this conflict requires that the ideology of Islamic extremism is itself discredited, end quote. What, in your judgment, is the source of the, quote, ideology of Islamic extremism, end quote, if it's not the Quran and the Imam or Islamic leaders' interpretations of the Quran?
It's a very twisted interpretation, and again, an interpretation that is rejected by the mainstream religious scholars of Islam. But there are diabolically, barbarically skillful uses of phrases from the Quran to justify this very extremist behavior, and it's sufficiently convincing to some who are in certain circumstances in life and so forth that it motivates them to join them.
Okay.
Now, of course, one of the great ways to discredit them is to defeat them on the battlefield, because nothing succeeds like success in the internet and so forth, where you're recruiting like success, and nothing is worse than failure on that battlefield, and that's why it's so important to beat them.
Well, you answered my second question before I even asked it. Thank you.
Mr. O'Rourke.